Meanwhile, back now to those developments out of Turkey. We're joined by CBS News senior national security analyst Juan Zarate by phone. And Juan, again, Turkish media now reporting that one of the bombers is Chechen, traveled to Istanbul from Raqqa, an ISIS stronghold. What do you make of the new information?
Well, I think this is now the definitive element and data that points to this attack being the responsibility of ISIS. The fact that they have the Russian, Uzbek, and Kyrgyz members involved, that the Turkish officials are declaring this, and the fact that they're linking this back to Raqqa, the veritable capital and headquarters of the Islamic State. That's in essence the conclusion that ISIS was responsible, and frankly, a reflection of the fact that ISIS has a multinational network of suicide attackers and networks in Turkey, which is exactly why the Turks are now cracking down more aggressively, and you've seen the roundups today. You're going to see more of that, of course. But this is significant in that it demonstrates the global nature of the threat. It underscores the fact that ISIS, despite the pressure being put on it in Iraq and Syria, remains able to launch and distribute attackers around the world. And does underscore the fact that with a safe haven of the type that ISIS has maintained, they are able to launch these kinds of attacks, whether it's in Europe or Turkey or elsewhere. And so there's no secret as to what they're trying to do, and there's no secret as to where they're doing it from. The question is, what do we do about it? And I think that's a major question for the U.S. and our coalition partners.
And it's certainly a major question now faced by Turkish officials. You and I have spoken about the de facto safe haven that Turkey had allowed ISIS to have to a degree, as it sheltered, again, to a degree, foreign fighters and used its airports as way stations. Someone I know you're familiar with, Fran Townsend, was on yesterday saying that Turkey has now discovered that when you keep a snake in your backyard, you can't always expect it to just bite the neighbors. Do you see, how do you see the relationship then between Turkish officials who perhaps had looked the other way and the Islamic State now?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, I've said for a long time that the regimes that have played with fire and played footsie with the violent extremist groups have learned that they can't control these groups for very long. Pakistan, we've seen that happen there. We saw it with Assad in Syria. Syria had been the way station for foreign fighters into Iraq when U.S. forces were there. And now with Turkey, Turkey's realizing that you can't allow these pockets of safe haven to exist and persist without that blowing back directly. And we're certainly seeing evidence of that. I think you're going to see now, especially with the pace of attacks, the significance of this Istanbul attack, and the involvement of foreigners here, the Turks getting much more aggressive in terms of their disruptions. Again, you've seen some arrests in Istanbul, some arrests of supporters in other parts of Turkey already. You're going to see more of that. And the reality is that they know where a lot of these people are. In some cases, they've allowed some of these havens to persist. And for those viewers who are wondering why, keep in mind that Turkey's main agenda here has been to see Assad toppled. And for a long time, these groups have been the most effective fighting forces against Assad. And so there's been a very clear national interest. And the Erdogan government has had more Islamist leanings and sympathies than prior Turkish governments, and so there's been more sympathy towards some of these causes as well. So this is all changing as we witness it. I think this attack is maybe seen in hindsight as a turning point in Turkish national policy on these issues, and ultimately you may see the final closure of the area of the border between Turkey and Syria that has remained open as a thoroughfare for foreign fighters. Turkey's going to get serious, and you're seeing it now.
And we also have seen the impact that Russian involvement had in Syria. Now that we've also learned that not only did one of these fighters travel from Raqqa, but that the fighter in question was in fact Chechen. What to make of that?
Well, I've seen a lot of news reports, people talking about how this is a new dimension of the threat. It's not new at all. In fact, the Chechens, the Dagestanis, some of the Uzbeks have been long-standing members of jihadi networks dating back to the 1990s. They've been members of Al-Qaeda. They've been members of IMU, Central Asian jihadi groups. and they've formed a major swath of the foreign fighters that have joined ISIS. So it's not surprising that you have these nationalities involved. I think what's interesting here is that this suicide squad that was used didn't involve any Turks or Kurds, which you have seen in the past from ISIS in Turkey. But certainly this is a representation that you have a multinational, very diverse composition to ISIS. Some of the fiercest fighters and jihadis historically have come from Chechnya, Dagestan, Ingushetia, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. So again, not new, but it does demonstrate that you've got multinational individuals running around as part of these ISIS squads. And frankly, the ability of ISIS to deploy them from their headquarters in Raqqa, which again demonstrates why that physical safe haven is so important to that group.
And would obviously mean that crackdown there in Turkey would have that much more of an impact.